Some of these stones weigh over 100 tons, yet no one can explain how they got there. These structures were built on impossible mountains, and nobody knows who built them. 8 mountain mysteries survived for centuries, and some still have no explanation.
Mountains cover about a third of the Earth's land surface. Most of them were never permanently settled by humans. Too high, too cold, too difficult to reach. And yet, in some of the most improbable places, on cliff tops, in cloud forests, and on wind-lashed plateaus nearly 2.5 miles above sea level, there are structures. They were built without metal tools, without cranes, and without roads. Some of these places remained hidden from the wider world for centuries. In some cases, the building material weighed as much as 130 tons, and the nearest quarry was more than 55 miles away. We gathered 8 of them. Every one is real, and almost none has a complete explanation. In northern Laos, in Shankwang province, there is a mountain plateau about 3,300 feet above sea level, and across the landscape stand thousands of stone vessels. They sit on slopes, along hill ridges, and at the edges of valleys. Some are upright, others lean or lie toppled over. The smallest are about 3 feet tall. The largest reach nearly 10 feet and weigh up to 14 tons. There are more than 2,100 of them, spread across over 90 separate sites. At some places, there are only 1 or 2 jars. At others, there are hundreds. This is the Plain of Jars, one of the strangest and least understood archaeological landscapes in the world. It became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2019. No one knows exactly who made them. The civilization that created these vessels seems to have existed roughly from 1240 BCE to 500 CE, then vanished without leaving written records or settlements nearby. In fact, no traces have been found showing where the builders actually lived. It appears they came here to perform burial rituals and then disappeared back into the unknown. What is clear is that the jars were used in funerary practices. Human remains, pottery, bronze objects, and glass beads have been found around and inside them, including some beads traced to Mesopotamia and southern India. That means this mountain plateau in Laos was connected to international trade routes long before any known states emerged there. Only 1 jar out of the thousands carries a carved decoration, a crouching human figure on its outer surface. What it means is still debated. The jars were made from 5 different kinds of stone. The nearest identified quarry lies about 5 miles away. Yet no physical evidence has been found showing how 14-ton objects were transported across mountainous terrain. Now move to the Bolivian highlands, nearly 13,000 feet above sea level. The air is so thin there that any physical labor takes roughly twice the effort it would on the plains. Trees do not grow above the tree line, which means wooden rollers for moving stone would not have been available. And still, here on a flat plateau near Lake Titicaca, massive blocks of red sandstone and andesite lie scattered across the site, weighing anywhere from 20 to 130 tons. They were brought from quarries, one about 6 miles away, another roughly 56 miles away. These stones were worked with a precision that modern engineers, using laser levels on their surfaces, describe as approaching zero deviation. Pumapunku is part of the Tiwanaku complex, built by a civilization that existed before the Inca. The faces of the blocks are strikingly flat. The corners are sharp. The measurements are accurate down to tiny fractions of an inch. Some holes were drilled so evenly and to such consistent depths that reproducing the same result by hand would be extremely difficult. Several blocks also feature dovetail-shaped grooves that once held poured metal clamps, cast directly on site using portable furnaces. Chemical analysis has shown that the alloy in these clamps contains nickel, even though there is no known local source of nickel in Bolivia. When the Inca conquered this region in the 15th century, Pumapunku was already in ruins. They did not know who had built it. Instead, they folded the place into their own cosmology. According to tradition, this was where the god Viracocha created the first humans. The site was so ancient that even the rulers of a vast empire could only explain it through legend. Today, Pumapunku is recognized by UNESCO as part of the Tiwanaku complex. In northern Peru, in the Amazonas region, at about 9,800 feet above sea level, where the eastern slopes of the Andes disappear into clouds and constant moisture feeds the tropical forest, there stands a massive complex covering more than 700,000 square feet. Its walls rise as high as 65 feet, and inside are around 450 circular stone structures. The site dates from the 6th to the 10th centuries CE. This is Cuelap. It was built by the Chachapoya, a civilization the Spanish later called the Warriors of the Clouds. The complex is about 700 years older than Machu Picchu and larger in total area. Yet it only became widely known in 1843 when a local judge named Juan Crisostomo Nieto came across it while traveling through his district. Inside the complex is a structure known as El Tintero, or the ink pot. It is an inverted cone cut into the floor of the main platform, about 16 feet across and 18 feet deep. Its purpose is still unknown. Theories range from a ritual space to an astronomical device to a storage chamber, but none has been confirmed. There is another mystery as well. The 3 entrance gates through the main wall narrow toward the bottom so sharply that only one person could pass through at a time. That would make any assault extremely difficult. Yet no evidence of major battles has been found on the site. Why build 65-foot walls in an isolated mountain forest and then apparently never use them for war? In 2017, a cable car nearly 2.5 miles long was built to reach Cuelap, the first of its kind in Peru. Before that, getting there meant climbing on foot for a day and a half through cloud forest. Even now, it remains one of the least visited major pre-Columbian sites in South America. In central Sri Lanka, rising out of a flat tropical plain, there is a rock nearly 660 feet high with vertical walls. It is the hardened core of a long-extinct volcano. The rock can be seen from miles away. On top of it, in the 5th century CE, a palace was built. King Kashyapa I ruled from 477 to 495 CE. According to tradition, he moved his capital here to create a residence beyond the reach of his enemies. On the summit, a palace complex was constructed with water systems, cisterns carved into the stone, and gardens. Some of the hydraulic features still function today. The gardens at the base of the rock are considered among the oldest landscaped gardens in the world. Halfway up the rock, in sheltered niches beneath an overhang, frescoes survive. Originally, there may have been around 500 of them. Today, only 18 remain legible. They depict female figures wearing jewelry. The painted wall once stretched nearly 500 feet long and rose about 50 feet high. What exactly these women represent, celestial beings, court ladies, or religious figures, remains a matter of debate. Just below the frescoes is the mirror wall, made of polished plaster and covered with inscriptions. Around 700 graffiti texts dating from the 6th to the 10th centuries have been preserved. These were left by visitors who came after Kashyapa's death. They wrote about the beauty of the paintings and their own emotions. It is one of the earliest documented examples in the world of ordinary visitors leaving written impressions beside a work of art. After Kashyapa died, the rock became a Buddhist monastery and remained one until the 14th century. Then the jungle reclaimed it. A British officer, Jonathan Forbes, became the first European to reach the base in 1831. The summit itself was not reached by early explorers until 1851. Sigiriya has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1982. In northern Ethiopia, at an elevation of about 8,200 feet, 11 churches were carved into basalt rock in the 12th and 13th centuries by order of King Gebra Meskel Lalibela. They were not built in the usual sense. They were cut from solid stone, from the top down and from the outside inward. The process worked like this. First, a trench was dug around the outline of the future church. Once the block of rock was isolated on all sides, craftsmen removed the stone from within, carving windows, doors, columns, and vaulted spaces. The best known of these churches is Bete Georgis, shaped like a perfectly symmetrical Greek cross. It descends about 40 feet below ground level and was carved from a single monolith. Local tradition says the entire complex was completed in just 24 years. Modern architects and engineers consider that timeline impossible even with steel tools and contemporary methods. Another mystery is what happened to the enormous volume of excavated rock. The amount removed must have been vast, yet no large spoil heaps have been found nearby. Tradition offers a simple explanation. At night, while the workers rested, angels came and labored twice as fast. Cambridge archaeologist David Phillipson proposed a different theory. Some of the churches may originally have been created much earlier, between the 6th and 8th centuries, perhaps as secular or fortified structures from the Aksumite period. Lalibela may simply have consecrated and expanded an already existing complex. These churches are still active today. Services are held there every day. This is not a dead ruin, but a living religious center, and it has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1978. In 1963, in the Turkish town of Derinkuyu in Nevşehir province, a local man was renovating his house and knocked down a wall in his basement. Behind it, he discovered a passageway. The passage led to a room. That room led to another, then to a tunnel descending into the earth. Behind that wall was an entire city. Derinkuyu is a multi-level underground complex about 280 feet deep with 18 levels. Researchers estimate it could have housed as many as 20,000 people at once, along with livestock and food supplies. Inside were living quarters, stables, storage rooms, dining areas, schools, and churches with baptismal fonts. More than 50 ventilation shafts, some nearly 100 feet deep, provided fresh air. Water came from an underground river on the lower levels. The tunnels between levels could be sealed with round stone doors, millstone-like slabs about 5 feet in diameter and weighing up to half a ton. They could only be closed from the inside. The complex was also linked to the neighboring underground city of Kaymakla by a tunnel about 5 miles long. Only 8 of the 18 levels are open to visitors today. The rest remain closed for safety reasons. The earliest references to underground shelters in this region date back to the 8th and 7th centuries BCE. The first excavations may have been begun by the Phrygians, then expanded during the Greco-Roman and Byzantine periods. The city was used as a refuge during Arab raids and later invasions. After the Greek population of Cappadocia was relocated in 1923 during the Greek-Turkish population exchange, memory of the city was almost completely lost, until that basement wall came down in 1963. Derinkuyu is part of the Göreme UNESCO World Heritage Area, listed in 1985. In the Dungrek Mountains on the border of Cambodia and Thailand, standing right at the edge of a cliff that drops nearly 1,640 feet onto the vast Cambodian plain, there is a temple of the Khmer Empire. This is Preah Vihear, a complex dedicated to Shiva. It was built between the 9th and 12th centuries under several kings. Its main axis stretches north to south for about half a mile, an unusual arrangement for Khmer architecture, where temples were normally aligned east to west. 5 gopuras, or gate structures, connected by long paved paths and stairways, lead the visitor higher and higher toward the main sanctuary at the very edge of the escarpment. The building material is gray and yellow sandstone, quarried right there in the Dungrek Mountains. Every block had to be raised more than 1,600 feet. Some decorative elements belong to the Bante Sray style of the late 10th century, one of the most refined styles in Khmer art. Why build it here, on the lip of a sheer cliff in a remote mountain range, in a place that once required hours of climbing to reach? Khmer kings referred to it as the sacred mountain of Sri Sikaresvara. It seems likely that the very inaccessibility and height were part of the design. The closer to the sky, the closer to the gods. Above Cusco in Peru, at about 12,100 feet above sea level, on the steep slope of a hill, stand 3 great zigzagging walls stretching for roughly 1,300 feet. Individual stone blocks weigh from 100 to 200 tons and were laid without a single drop of mortar. You cannot slide a sheet of paper between neighboring stones. Every block has a unique shape, irregular polygons fitted together like pieces of a 3-dimensional puzzle. This is Sacsayhuaman. It survived earthquakes that destroyed Spanish colonial buildings in Cusco again and again, precisely because the stones can shift slightly in relation to one another during seismic movement, instead of cracking apart. When the first Spanish chroniclers saw the complex in the 1530s, they could hardly believe it. The official historian, Pedro Cieza de León, wrote that the place was worthy of admiration and seemed to require supernatural help. Others said it must have been built by giants or demons. The Spanish quickly began dismantling the complex for building material. Stone taken from Sacsayhuaman was used to build the cathedral on Cusco's main square and many other colonial structures. Today, only about 20% of the original complex survives, mostly the lower courses of the walls that the Spanish could not move. Construction began under the Emperor Pachacuti in the 15th century. Historical accounts say more than 20,000 workers were involved at the same time. The stones were brought from quarries as far as 12 miles away, without wheels, without iron tools, and without draft animals strong enough for the job. According to researchers, the largest blocks were dragged on wooden sledges by thousands of people. Beneath the complex are tunnels known as chincanas. The smaller one is open to visitors. The larger one has been sealed. According to local tradition, it runs underground all the way to the Coricancha temple in the center of Cusco, a distance of about 1.25 miles. Since the entrance was closed off, its full length has never been officially confirmed. The mountains preserve some of the strangest secrets in human history, not because something mystical was hidden there, but because those were the places people went when they wanted to build something others were not meant to see, or something meant to last forever, or something whose meaning vanished with its makers.